JLI series. Tonight we have an interesting class that we're going to talk about one of the more important aspects of the medical field, and that of course is organ transplants. And we're going to discuss tonight not so much about organ transplants, because this is not a medical class, but the way halacha, the way Jewish law looks at medical transplants. Some of the things which are permitted, some things which are prohibited, some things which are permitted, but looked askance upon, and we'll try to kind of cover the wide range.
To transplant.
Yeah. Tell you. All right. To start off the class, we're going to have a quiz. Okay? So you got to put on your thinking caps for this quiz. And the question is, I don't know if you know this or not, but if you know, you have to go to medical school because probably you read the newspapers. When was the first organ transplant, successful organ transplant taken place? The first successful organ transplant.
Was it around 1978?
For the 40s,
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Day one. The first successful transplant was a rib. Okay? That was the first successful transplant. Okay? Etzem basar mibsari, etzem mi'atzamai. I take it's meat from my meat, a bone from my bones, and that's how he created Eve, right? That's
second version.
Right, that's how he created the lady, all right? The woman, all right? We won't get it. That's for the next JLI class, all right? So that was the first successful organ transplant. Since then, we went through a what? It's not an organ, but it's a part of the body. It's a part of the body. It's a part of the body that got transplanted. Since then, organ transplants have come a long way. Since day one, if you read the history of organ transplants, it goes all the way back even into early times, just after the Common Era. It says that they were Roman doctors that were transplanting a foot. It says, I think the first transplant was a foot of a diseased missionary, and they found this African, and they took his foot, and they tried to transplant it on this white missionary, and I mean, it's a legend probably, but I mean, it was an organ transplant. The only reason why I mention this is organ transplants go back way back. Of course, in the 20th century, were the first successful organ transplants. The first one, according to the little research that I did, was the cornea. The cornea was the first successful transplant in 1905. That goes way back, 1905. It took another 50 years for the next organ to be transplanted successfully. It was not the heart, but it was actually, I believe in the 50s, the kidney. The kidney may have been the next organ to be transplanted successfully. Shortly in 1967, before the heart, I think the liver or another organ before, and then I remember the first one that I remember in the big news was, of course, the heart transplant in 1967 in South Africa, Dr. Bernard, and it was a big thing, a splash all over the world. Now, he was not the first to do a heart transplant. There were heart transplantations done before him, but his actually was the first to succeed for a little while, and then he did a lot of them, and most of them died within a couple of months or 6 months. They died, and then Denton Cooley here in the United States was the next big transplantation expert down in Texas, and over a while it went from the heart, and then multiple organ transplants started to happen, and when we've come here today where transplantation of organs is not as risky, and that's going to be a key word tonight, not as risky as it was back then. I mean, again, there's no such thing as zero risk. That we don't have. There's no such thing as zero risk, but it's the risk of what used to be and the risk of today has gone down a lot. And that's what we're going to be dealing with here, the class this evening, looking primarily from a halachic point of view, from a Jewish point of view. I'm not talking about a medical point of view, whether you should do it, don't do it, will do it, can't do it, but just generally overall. Okay, there are three types of individuals that can give an organ away. What are those, and what kind of state are they in? Number one, I'm sorry about the books. They were supposed to come in, didn't come in today. Number one is organs taken from a brain-dead individual. Okay? Now we're going to talk a lot about this idea of brain-dead. Somebody that's not brain-dead in the sense where they're alive and they're not smart. We're talking about an individual that is brain-dead. Such a person has irreversibly lost consciousness and the ability to breathe spontaneously. However, through the aid of a ventilator, they keep it in the heart and the circulatory systems, and they continue to operate. The doctors sometimes call these guys heart-beating donors. These are heart-beating donors, meaning they're brain dead, but their heart is still beating. Okay, the heart, and it's even though it's done through a machine, but it's a heart beating. The heart is still beating. That's number one. The other is, for example, organs that are taken from someone. Again, like I mentioned before, and I'm sorry about the books. They were supposed to come in today, but the second category we're going to be dealing with is people that suffer cardiac arrest. They're dead. Right, but they're not completely dead. They suffer cardiac arrest, and everything stops. The heart stops. Circulatory system has ceased to function. In this case, it says the heart can't be transplanted because it begins to deteriorate immediately. So the heart is of no use if someone has cardiac arrest. But still, there's still some things that could be donated. His kidneys could be donated. Some other organs that could be donated. This sometimes are referred to, and we'll be dealing with this non-heart-beating form of cadaveric. Is that the way you would mention? Cadaveric. Right? It's a cadaveric donation. Cadaveric means something. Yeah, is it cadaveric? Cadaveric is something that got to do with the corpse. If you look it up in a dictionary, it's something that has to do with a corpse. So we have here two states, two individuals that unfortunately are not going to live. I mean, they're brain dead. One of them is the heart is beating, and one of them the heart is not beating. When the heart is not beating, obviously the heart is of no use. Other organs are. But again, they're not dead. I mean, they're not dead, like, ready to be buried. They're in this state of brain dead. And of course, the third category we're going to be dealing with is just a live donor. Someone that would like to donate organs. Now, there are some organs you could donate while you're still alive. For example, a kidney. You could donate a kidney while you're still alive, because you could function with one kidney. And we're going to go through all of these three categories to find out under what circumstances you can donate an organ, where you should donate an organ, where you'd be encouraged to donate an organ, and where you'd be absolutely forbidden to donate an organ. And we're going to go through all of these cases. Okay. Here is the case study that we're going to be dealing with tonight. Okay, page 44 if you're following along in the books, but you don't have to look. What? Indeed, no. The dilemma began in 1996 when David Patterson, serving a 13-year sentence for burglary and heroin possession, donated a kidney to Rianda Daniel, the 13-year-old daughter he had abandoned as an infant. Rianda was born with congenital renal anomalies and underwent cadaveric renal transplant at age 5. When the transplant failed, she had dialysis for 7 years. In 1966, her father underwent compatibility testing, was found to be the best transplant match. He donated his kidney and thereby renewed his friendship and relationship with his daughter. This altruistic donation received national media attention because it required the permission and financial support of prison authorities. Remember last week we talked about prisoners not being able to do testing and all of that stuff. Here, since it was a father, he got special permission to do it, and he donated one of his kidneys to his daughter. Great, wonderful. She lives, he lives, everybody's happier. This was in 1996. Fast forward to 1998. 16-year-old Rianda was hospitalized at University of California, San Francisco with acute rejection episode. During this hospitalization, her father made the unprecedented offer to replace her failing kidney with his remaining one. Okay? Transplant surgeons at the university refused to consider his offer, but the family insisted. The guy said, look, I'll go through, you can live without a kidney because what do you do? Dialysis. So you could live. I mean, he wasn't going to die. He was willing to live on dialysis. His daughter should live. I mean, altruistic, wonderful, heartbreaking, he was the girl that he abandoned. I mean, it was great. But the matter was referred to the hospital's ethics committee. Okay? I'm not going to tell you what they decided, but just to tell you that one of the things that would be an outcome of him going on dialysis is it would definitely shorten his life. I mean, you're not going to live as long. I mean, even though the percentage of dialysis patients have greatly increased in their survival, but still, in 10 years out, is major. 10 years out is major. All right? So now, here's the first question. What would Jewish law say about these transplants? Okay? So she had an early transplant, was rejected. The father gave her, rejected. Second one, we don't know what the end of the story is. Okay?
Second one's cadaveric, so that's not.
No, second one's not cadaveric. He's alive. The father's living and he's healthy. Which, if any, do you think Jewish law would permit? Kidney number 1 from a cadaver is permitted, forbidden, obligated by Jewish law, and you would say, if you went ahead and taken a kidney from a cadaver, is it permitted? Is it forbidden? Is it obligated to give it? Okay, so the number thing would be is it's permitted. I mean, if you can get a kidney from a cadaver and it's still working, and you're a recipient in Jewish law, it's permitted. Okay, it's permitted. It means you, the recipient, it's allowed to take it. Okay, so the donor we're going to get to in a second, Okay, kidney number 2 from a live donor, leaving the donor with a remaining kidney, is, from the donor's point of view, permitted, forbidden, obligated by Jewish law? Permitted. It's not forbidden, and it's not obligated. Okay, now even though we may think that obligation plays a part here, right? Obligation plays a part here. Why would obligation play a part? Think. Well, because it's why? What? No. I'm talking about obligated. I'm not talking about permitted. I'm talking about from someone that Jewish law would obligate to give his kidney. Why? We could make a strong argument that way, right? Why? To save a life. Well, it's not going to hurt you. You could live with one kidney. Here's a person that's dying. You have a healthy kidney that you could give away. You could make a very strong argument in this room right now that you should be obligated according to Jewish law. And you may say, no, I don't care what Jewish law obligates me to do. I'm not going under the knife. But as far as halakha is concerned, we could make an argument, and we will see later on what the Jewish codifiers say about this, that you should obligate it to give the guy your kidney. Come on, you're saving someone's life. You could live with one kidney. Okay? So, but set aside that argument, we would say it's permitted. Right? It's permitted to give. If you want to give a kidney, it's permitted to give. Kidney.
You've switched between one
Okay, and we could go back.
Either you're looking at it from the donor standpoint, or you're looking at it from the recipient standpoint.
Okay, so let's go back to number 1 from the donor standpoint. Kidney 1, number 1 from a cadaver. From a cadaver, is it permitted to give it? Forbidden or obligated? It's permitted.
It depends whether he's Jewish.
What?
I mean, I'm sure you're going to find someone who's going to say that.
No, to save a life, let's leave out Jewish or not who the recipient is. To save a life, is it permitted to give from a cadaver? Yes. Jewish law would say that you can sign a card saying that if I go and my kidneys are good, take them. And we'll see all the restrictions around it. I mean, there may be a difference here or there, whether it's to harvest them or to actually save someone's life. But we're talking about kidney 1 from a cadaver, not obligated. It's not forbidden. It is permitted. But we'll see under certain restrictions, how, what, and when. Okay, that's even from a cadaver. Kidney number 3 from a live donor, leaving the donor without any kidney, is a guy says, "Hey, I want to do it. I don't care. This is more important that my child should live than I'm going to live. I don't care." Permitted? Who says? Anybody agree? Permitted? Permitted. You say, the Torah would say, "Hey, you know what? If you want to do it, this is a great thing to do it." Anybody say forbidden? Forbidden. Most of the people say forbidden. Obligated? No. No one says obligated to do that. Okay, we're going to see, but most of the poskim, most of the codifiers agree this is forbidden. It is forbidden. It's an altruistic thing to do. It's a great thing to do. You get a mitzvah for being a nice person, but you can't do it. You can't do it. To give up your life, to save someone else's life is very nice. It would be nice to do that. But most poskim, we'll find, of course, halach has a wide range. Most codifiers say no. Sorry, you cannot give up your life to save someone else's life. Chayecha koidmin. There's an old rule of your life takes precedent over someone else's life.
How about running into a burning building to save a baby?
Okay, no, that's a different story. That's putting yourself at risk. Okay, that's putting yourself at risk. Yes, putting yourself at risk. We're going to have cases down the line here that we're going to find out how far does Torah obligate you to put yourself at risk. Because there's a vast difference between, when someone's drowning, so, I'm not a great swimmer, right? But I think I could manage myself in the water. Someone's drowning, what obligation do I have to jump into the river to save the guy? Probably a lot. That's a lot different than coming to me and saying, "I want to rip your heart out," or give your heart. Einstein is dying. Anybody here want to give Einstein a heart? No? Nobody wants to give Einstein a heart? Okay.
But this is a kidney. It's not a heart.
Right. Yeah.
And a kidney.
No, but this is a kidney, your last kidney. Mm-hmm. This is your last kidney.
But you can still live without.
But no. You could live, but it's not.
So the girl is the one that has to go on dialysis.
Yes, it's the girl that has to go on dialysis. Now, I'm not going to hold you hostage. Because you could read in the back. What happened was the ethics committee got together at the University of California, San Francisco, and decided they're not doing it. That's a very nice thing, but they're not accepting the father's second kidney. Why? Because it's going to shorten his life, and since it's going to shorten his life, they're not going to do it. So what happened? An uncle gave her a kidney. But unfortunately, she didn't make it. It was a match. They did the transplant. They did everything, but it didn't work. So, she lived a few years, but you'll see at the end of the class that she ultimately passed away, and they didn't want to take it. Okay. Let's deal now. Marvin had brought up an issue here about a corpse wanting to make a donation. Okay? Guy wants to make a donation. We're talking about now a cadaveric donation. Non-heart beating donation. Person is gone. Okay? We're going to take, for the sake of our lessons, we will assume that the cadaveric kidney came from the body of a non-heart beating donor. Okay? So now we're going to deal with all of the relevant halachic issues to it. Okay? Now, we're going to make now a very, very strong case. A strong case, I'm going to say a very strong case, but a strong case that you cannot, from a halachic point of view, from the Judaism's point of view, you cannot donate and take anything from a cadaver. You can't take anything from a cadaver. Why would that be? Because the Torah is going to look at the body. It doesn't belong to you. You came into the world this way, you have to leave the world this way. That's the way it works. It is to save a life, and we need to save a life, and look at this, what you could do and all of that. We're sorry. That's the way it is. Remember last week we talked about not going to a doctor, hashgacha pratis, everything is divine providence. We accept things as they are. We're going to see from text way back that the body and everything that's within the body is holy, sacred, and that's the way it works. So we're going to pick up the text on page 46, the first text. Okay? And this is from what one of the great codifiers in the Middle Ages, the Chassam Sofer, wrote. Late Middle Ages. Jews, however, believe that even after death, the deceased is still called a person. Okay? That's important. That means in liturgy and in text from the Talmud, it's not called a corpse, it's called a person. Adam ki yamus ba'oyel. And not a corpse, as the verse states, a person that has died in a tent. If we look at the verse in Numbers, in the book of Bamidbar, it talks about this in the mitzvah of the red heifer. It refers to this person as Adam ki yamus ba'oyel, a person that died in the tent. It doesn't say what? A corpse that's laying in the tent. He's still a person even though he's dead. Even after death, there remains residual holiness in the body, which served, why? Because it served as a receptacle for the soul, and therefore we treat it with respect. So, I beg your pardon? Well, till you bury it. Till you have to bury it. That means the body is not something that we're going to kick around or abuse or do anything with it, but the body in and of itself has some inherent holiness to it, because it as before had served as the receptacle for God's gift to us, the soul, a living breath from God itself, and since it was that receptacle, you just don't fool around with it. Right? It would be like, for example, if you served as once upon a time as a minister. Now, even though you're retired and you're but still, you still retain that respect, because once upon a time you were at the level of power. Ex-presidents in the United States, till they die, have Secret Service. Even though, the president could be out of office for 40 years, he doesn't know any of the secrets anymore. Well, what's the danger of him, whatever? But still, the respect that we deliver to a president, he contains that Secret Service until he passes away. And that's the body. The body still retains some sort of holiness even after the soul has left it.
For what period of time?
Till it's buried. Until the body is buried. And that's the next step. Because how fast, in Judaism we know that, do we wait 7 days to bury the body? 1 day. We want to get it gone as quickly as possible. To delay a funeral is very difficult. There are certain circumstances you could delay a funeral for a family to get there for other things, but immediately we try to bury the body as quickly as we possibly can, and that's simply for one reason: respect. The body is out there, it's it's that. We want it to have its final resting place, and then that's it. And therefore, one of the things that we try to avoid is an autopsy. Not if we can. Now, sometimes you can't avoid an autopsy, no matter if you go to court and try to stop it, it's unavoidable. But most cases, if you can avoid an autopsy, we don't. Why? Because the body is holy. And everything within the body is holy, and we just don't cut around the body for no reason. Okay? Then here text number 2 says, if the deceased has instructed that he not be buried after his death, we do not listen to him, because burial is a mitzvah. As it states, you shall bury him on the same day. If someone, God forbid, gets killed, you bury him on the same day. All right? So what do we have from these 2 texts? We know that the body and everything within the body, that's really what we really care about today. The body and all of the organs within the body are holy, don't belong to the person individually. It belongs to their Hashems. So they came down, they go up.
But at the time the Katan Sofer lived, he didn't know about transplants, and the only reason for taking a kidney is defacing the body, and or gaining some financial benefit from it. But he doesn't know that some mitzvah can occur from it.
Right.
At the time.
We haven't finished the class yet. We're not over. The second shoe hasn't fallen yet. We're still arguing from textual sources within Judaism as how Judaism looks at a corpse. That's what we're saying here. We haven't finished the class. At the end of the class, we may say that the Chassam Sofer agrees with you that had I lived today would be fine. That's the way it is. But we're just looking that the Torah, all he's saying is a very simple statement. The Chassam Sofer, the Torah has said to us that the body, even when it's dead, it's not alive, is holy. That's it. And therefore, it has to be buried quickly, treated with the utmost respect, bar none. And therefore, what is forbidden, which would be a big issue today? Cremation. Now, this is not a class about burial or cremation, but this is because, why does Judaism forbid cremation? Because, what does it say in the good book? Where did you come from? From dust you came, and to dust you shall return. It's not you. It's not your body to burn or to do anything. And that's what we're talking about over here. And he says, anyone who delays the burial of a dead person overnight is in violation of a negative commandment. This is what Maimonides argues, unless the delay is for the honor of the deceased and to complete preparation, burial needed for the deceased. That's not the family coming in, or it's an important person, so you want to get a big funeral in honor of the deceased. But other than that, everything has to be moved at a quick pace when it comes to burying the dead. So if we stopped right here, if the class had ended up right over here, okay? What would we say now about taking organs from a corpse? Yes or no? No. From what we talked about over here, we would say no, because the corpse doesn't belong to him. The body belongs to Hashem, the organs belong to Hashem, and therefore you can't give it away, even though you could save a life. You would have no foot to stand on unless you introduce something new here, which we may see later on in the class. But from the text that we have read right now, everything that we've read right now, that the body has to be buried, and that the dead person is a person, all of these things would infer to us they don't belong to him, and that's it, and the body has to go whole. What?
It's not what you're discussing two different things.
Why?
Because you're going to... You're discussing two different things. One of the things you're talking about doing a transplant.
Yes.
So what's going to happen is you can, any mitzvah except for the big three, you can violate in order to save a life. So therefore, you're not considering that.
1 second. So but that may only be about a living person. A living person is chayiv on pikuach nefesh. You're arguing. No, not Kal v'chomer. On the contrary, no, because he has. No. Let me just explain what's going on here. Marvin is arguing because you have to do everything. You have to. If you yourself are dying, right? You do everything to violate any precept to live, right? Any precept to live. So if that's true, if that is true, so I could desecrate the Sabbath, I could desecrate keeping kosher, except for the three biggies that we've discussed in previous classes. That's idolatry, adultery, and murder. That you can't. So whatever you have to do, you have to. So therefore, what would happen? So if that is the case, why don't I give away a kidney? If it's pikuach nefesh, why I don't have any obligation to give away a kidney? Even though I have 2 live kidneys, I don't have to give it away. If that would be the case, I would have to be now. There's probably 100,000 people waiting for kidneys. If it's pikuach nefesh, I would have to go. Every live person would have to give away a kidney. But it's not true. That's not pikuach nefesh. Pikuach nefesh means, and we'll see that. And even if I was obligated, even if the Torah said, you know what, you are obligated, you have to give away a kidney, that would only be about a live person. A corpse, once the corpse is dead, no mitzvah applies to him. So since no mitzvah applies to the corpse, therefore why should he have to give away any of his organs? You shouldn't have to give any organ away. No mitzvah applies to him. So there could be arguments back and forth. I'm not saying this would be the halach at the end of the game, but some argument could be made that way. That sure, if you're a live person, you may have to give it. But and we'll see at the end of the day that even though I may want to give away an organ, I may be a nice guy to give away an organ, I'm certainly not obligated to give away any of my organs. So it's not pikuach nefesh. People die every day. That's the facts of life.
What about organ donors? That you put a little
Okay, so that's only after you're dead.
I know.
Right? Then you don't say that take my kidney while I'm sleeping.
But
What?
you make the decision.
Yes. So therefore, we'll see. We'll see what happens over here. We'll see. We'll get to that. That's really the case. But I'm just saying from what he's trying to build over here is he's telling you that a body is not a simple thing. It's just not in Judaism. It's just not, hey, the body is dead. Let's drag it. Like the famous story I once heard when a guy got interviewed. He wanted to get into Harvard Medical School. And the guy who was interviewing him said, the only way you're going to get into Harvard Medical School is as a cadaver. Okay, that's the only way you're going to get in here in medical school. Okay, so. Well, okay, better dead than anything, right? Okay, so therefore, what he's trying to argue over here, the author, is no. In Judaism, there's no such thing as giving your body for science. You cannot desecrate the body. You can't do anything with the body. The body has to be whole, buried, gone. Thank you very much. Things and since then, okay, so we do look at text 48. The derivative of that would be, Maimonides writes, it is forbidden to derive benefit from any part of the dead except for the hair, which one may derive benefit from it since it's not part of the body. He argues it is also forbidden to derive benefit from the coffin or any of the shrouds. Meaning, like, take the coffin and try to sell the wood, or the guy's already, after a few months, the guy, or a year or whatever it is, he doesn't need the shrouds anymore. He's not around anymore, right? So you take the shrouds, you want to resell them. Rambam says, Asr bahana. This is forbidden to have any pleasure. Once it's dedicated to the dead, it is gone, and have a good day. That's it. So therefore, and not only that, but God forbid if someone had an amputation. Right, a limb was amputated, that limb gets buried with the person if it's still around, because that's the way traditional Judaism has looked up at the makeup of the body itself. The body itself. Okay? So what happened? An incident happened in Bnei Brak. Oh, you know where Bnei Brak is? Bnei Brak is a suburb of Tel Aviv. It's close to Tel Aviv. If you ever been to Bnei Brak, I think you could find a minyan for mincha there. Let's put it this way. There's tens of thousands of very, very Orthodox Jews. Very, very serious place. And who was the chief rabbi of Bnei Brak years and years ago at the time of the destruction of the Second Temple? Rabbi Akiva, none other than Rabbi Akiva himself. The great Rabbi Akiva was the chief rabbi of today's Bnei Brak. So whoever sits now in the seat as chief rabbi in Bnei Brak, Rabbi Landau, he is sitting in the same seat. Not the same chair. The chair probably changed after a while. But he's sitting in the same rabbinic seat that Rabbi Akiva sat as chief rabbi of Bnei Brak. And it happened that a kid sold a piece of property that he inherited from his father, and he died. The kid died. The family members came to court and argued that they should be able to overturn the sale because he was a minor. Because minors can't really make a good decision on this, and they came to Rabbi Akiva to ask if they could happen. Now, how would you know that he's a minor or not? So what they wanted to do is they wanted to dig him up and to check to see if he had any physical characteristics, whether he was a minor or an adult. They were going to just check to see. And Rabbi Akiva forbid that. He says, you are not permitted to disgrace the body. You can't just dig him up and look at the body. The body's buried. You can't do that. All right? So, therefore, we again, just to reiterate here from the Gemara's point of view, is that the body is out of bounds for us. It's out of bounds. Once the person has died, it's over. Have a good day, and that's the way it is. Okay? So, therefore, we might think that in just from what we've talked about over here is that you're out of luck. Once you're dead, and you don't control anything anymore, or no one controls you. You have to go. But this may not be the case, because we're going to introduce a whole idea, a unique idea, which there gives us the right, if not the responsibility, of doing whatever we can. And we'll see how this even includes someone that's cadaveric or dead, or even the next stage. Okay. Now, he has a quote here from one of the great chief rabbis of Israel, Rabbi Unterman. You don't have this. You don't have this quote because it's just like in the cheat sheets that that I have. Okay, and he writes like this. Rabbi Yehuda Unterman writes that the concern of benefiting from a corpse and the obligation of burial for the corpse is not relevant to organ donation. That's Marvin saying. Okay? The fact that we have to bury the dead and we have to honor the corpse has no relevance. But this took how long? How long did it take? Rabbi Unterman lived. He was maybe 30 years ago. He was a chief rabbi of Israel. Right? So this was a relatively new ruling here. He writes like this. Since the organ, and this is the key. This is the key. Why is this so? Since the organ is integrated into a live body and therefore assumes the status of a living body part. So if you take a living kidney and you put it into another living person, so what did you do? You took a living kidney and kept it alive. No problem, right? But other than that, so this is good news, bad news. The good news is that Rabbi Unterman would allow for kidney transplants. What would be for research? If he said, hey, I want to take a kidney or I want to take your heart and I just want to start cutting it up and to see what it is. No, because only what he says is that you have to take it from a living person directly into another living person. All right? Regarding the issue of desecration, Rabbi Unterman argued that if, while still alive, a person had expressed to the wish to posthumously donate an organ, then one brings honor, he writes. One brings honor rather than disrespect to the deceased by respecting this wish. In addition, since by using the body parts for the purpose of saving a life, back to Marvin, we bring merit to their soul. Perhaps transplantation would be allowable even if the deceased had never explicitly expressed the desire to donate. He never said anything. But it's available. So he says maybe, is he going to mind? Well, he's not going to care, right? Does he need a kidney now? No. Another important argument regarding desecration is that the prohibition in the case of the Talmud can be seen as due to lack of pressing need to allow disrespect to the course in that particular case. The case of transplantation, however, may be seen as sufficient justification to allow the desecration of the body. Right? That's just another thing. So from here, Rabbi Unterman has come and taken our arguments and turned them around and said that what we thought for the past 15 minutes and argued about the honor of the body, really we take it the next level of that transplantation is not a desecration, but a great honor for them, a great honor.
So how come in the Bible when it talks about in the time to come, world to come, God's going to bring the dead back to life?
Right.
You don't have all your parts.
Don't worry, he'll get you. You don't have anything anyways. What are you? I mean, I hate to break the news, but we're all adults here. I mean, the old song that we used to sing in camp, the worms crawl in, the worms crawl out, the worms play pinochle on your snout, right? I mean, honestly, you're not there for a long time, the way you are. I mean, you become dust, and then Hashem's going to figure out a way by Tchias HaMesim to figure you and put you back, because what? The valley of the bones, Hashem took. You put the hip bone connected to the zip bone, that whole thing. So we're hoping, of course, that He puts us back in our most, when we're thin and, when we look the best. You don't want to come back like, you were like on your way out. Come back, decrepit, you want to come back like, that you look like under your chuppah. Let's put it that way. That's how everybody should come back. Well, Andrea, did someone else have a question? Andrea and then Mark.
Two questions. Does the Jew have a right to not have an autopsy done on them?
Yes.
And also, when a woman has a miscarriage, should that unborn baby be buried?
Yes.
Or sometimes the hospitals take them and put them with medical waste without your knowledge?
No, they bury them. If it's a miscarriage, you bury. And if it's a stillborn, it's a burial. So that's and again, as we mentioned before, that and I should say this. I want to make a disclaimer. We're not here tonight to be the final halachic arbiter here tonight. I mean, if we're just talking theory here this evening. I just want to say this is theoretical physics. This is not practical. We're not building any spaceships or anything like that. Because God forbid, if you ever had a case that you needed something serious, you got to go to the halachic authorities that deal with these questions and ask them. We're just talking in general rules and regulations, how Judaism looks at present-day medical issues. Now, based upon we'll use Rabbi Unterman's ruling as a springboard to talk about Judaism's its infatuation with life. It's literally its infatuation with life. Did someone have a question that I did not? Mark, I'm sorry.
Talk about that before, about coming back.
It's really the soul that's coming back, not the physical body.
But we believe Tchias Mesim is going to be a body, that people will come back in their body. Now, how that's going to work, again, is going to be up to Hashem. He's the creator of the world. He's a very creative God. He'll figure it out. But somehow we're going to, we will get back. All right. So we've often talked about Judaism's almost compulsive way of dealing with life to live. We have to live. We do anything we can to live. Anything we can to live. Right? As it says, Ushmartem es chukoisai, page 49, the text, you shall observe my laws and ordinances, which a person shall perform, and then the key words, and live by them. I am the Lord. And live by them. Now, living by them does not only mean in spiritual terms that, you're going to perform a mitzvah, you're going to live, you're going to eat matzah on Pesach, you'll feel healthier, you'll shake a lulav, you'll feel great, but you actually live by them, that God forbid, you should never try to use these mitzvahs or perform these mitzvahs in a way that are going to be harmful to you. V'chai bahem, so the Talmud says, it uses the words, and you should live by them and not die by them. Meaning that pikuach nefesh, to save a person's life, your own life to start off with, is tantamount within Judaism, and therefore, if God forbid, on Yom Kippur you're fasting and you're going to go out and it's going to be dangerous to you, you may eat. If on Shabbos there's a fire, you may go in and save the person. Someone is dry. You have to do whatever you can in order to live. If one took ill and is about to die, and the doctors advise that he could only be cured by doing something forbidden by Torah law, then we should follow the physician's counsel. Now, this is a general rule. It has a lot of caveats, because if the person says, I want to do something that's forbidden, really forbidden, then he's not going to, I need to bow down to an idol. I'm so ill, but I think I'm going to feel better if I bow down to an idol. Would they permit him to do that? No. Okay, of course not. All right? But if the guy says, look, the taste of bacon, I'm going to die if I don't taste bacon. Literally. And he gets sicker and sicker and sicker. Then what do? Give him the bacon, tell him to go back to yeshiva. Right? Just get it over with. Right? Okay, in cases of danger, we violate any of the commandments of the Torah. Should this bring a cure? Except for 3. Idolatry, forbidden sexual relations. Like if someone says, I got to have relations with that girl, you're dying. You're going to be dead. Because there's no obligation for you to have any relation with her. And murder, which is all prohibited even in the face of danger. So therefore, pikuach nefesh, that means when your life is in danger, is often called as the trump card allows all sorts of otherwise prohibited activities. Okay? But pikuach nefesh has some, like I said before, there's some restrictions to it. It has to be now. The danger to life has to be right now, not in the future. Okay? Because I'm going to give you 4 examples of desecrating of Shabbos, and you're going to tell me, can we or can we not, based upon what we've studied so far. Okay? You're required to take a CPR course. Everybody that deals with little kids, if you're a teacher in a nursery school, if you're dealing with children, you are required to take a CPR course. The course is offered only on Shabbos. Okay? It's only offered on Shabbos. Okay? Why do you take the CPR course? Because one day you may save someone's life. Can you take the course on Shabbos?
No.
Why not? There is 2 words the key words that you have to remember here. It's a clear and present danger. That's not 2 words. Clear and present danger. 4 words, right? That's what it is. Clear and present danger. Those are the things, that's the criteria. Okay? You own an apartment building. You are required to replace the smoke alarm batteries in public buildings on Shabbos, because it is dangerous for people to be in a building without a working smoke alarm. What's a smoke alarm going to do? It's going to warn you about a fire and it's going to save a life. Can you put smoke alarms on Shabbos? No, you cannot. Why not? What's lacking? Clear and present danger. Okay? Someone's drowning. You're walking by the river. You see the person drowning. even though swimming may be prohibited, taking a boat out is prohibited, other things are prohibited. May you take a boat out, call the lifeguard on your cell phone, do everything to save that person? Yes. Why? What's present? Because a clear and present danger is right there. Okay, you are required to call an ambulance on Shabbos for a person suffering from a severe asthma attack. Can you call the ambulance? Yes. Because there is right there a clear and present danger. So you do everything. Once the person is in front of you, that's God forbid, that's suffering, you take Shabbos, asay Shabbat chachol, you make the Shabbos profane in order for this person to be able to keep many more Shabbosim. Okay? Right? So therefore, this will come into play because it's pekuach nefesh, because it is something that we want to live so badly, we set aside all the other things in the Torah. So how is this going to play here when it comes to organ donations? It makes a huge difference. It changes. It's a game changer, right? Beforehand, we said, hey, you know what? Look, the body is the body, and you can't touch the body. And that's the way it's going to go. But we know what's even a greater principle within Judaism is v'chai bohem, that you have to live with it. Got to live with it. Okay. Okay, all right. And so we know that the first two cases, there was no way to save a life, so you couldn't. But candidates for organ transplants are generally suffering from a life-threatening illness. Furthermore, because organs deteriorate so quickly after they are harvested, current practice is to remove the organ only if a potential match can be identified. Thus, transplantation fits the criteria of, here are the clear words, Sakonis nefashis, which means Sakonis nefashis is a danger to a life. Lifanenu. Lifanenu means in front of us. It means that the clear and present danger is here right now. Now, you know what? I heard that someone may be suffering from some kind of renal failure. So therefore, why don't I go? No, that's not going to work. The person has to be there, lifanenu. And since most transplants you're facing life and death, no, that's no problem. It fits this criteria of a clear and present danger right there in front of us. Okay? It is obvious that we are obligated to donate an organ from the deceased for the sake of a possible rescue of a living person that is in danger in front of us. That means someone needs the organ right now, and that's how it works. You know, we have here, if you notice, on Friday night, we have, the nurse, Ms. Friedman, who works here. She works in the transplantation department in St. Mary's. She's always on call. At a moment's notice, she has to rush out of here. Boom, she's gone. Because why? Melissa, thank you. Melissa, she's gone right out of the door because it's right there. You get a call that we need the person needs the heart's available. There's no waiting on this. You move quickly. So Rabbi Zalman Auerbach says that it is obvious that we are obligated. Think of the word here. He goes one step further. We are obligated to donate an organ from the deceased for the sake of a possible rescue of a living person that is in danger. This view is not by no means unanimous. Although the principle of pekuach nefesh is undisputed, yes, you have to save a life. There is an opinion that views that any such transplants as counter to the ways of the Torah, since the deceased are not obligated in the mitzvahs. The deceased is not obligated to do any mitzvahs, including the mitzvah to save a life. And therefore, the various prohibitions cannot be superseded for something in which they are not obligated. So since, on one hand, you can't desecrate the body, so these rabbis would say, no, once you're dead, no mitzvahs apply to you, and therefore you can't touch the body. Okay? There's always two sides to every coin. Rabbi Auerbach, who died several years ago, was at a ripe old age, argues differently, that you're obligated to do it. So let's see here. If someone would ask whether to donate an organ after death for the purpose of transplantation, we would recommend against this. This is Rabbi Eliezer Waldenberg, one of the authors of the Tzitz Eliezer. Why? It states the dead are free. meaning that there is no obligation for the deceased person to engage in mitzvahs, even for the purpose of saving a life. Okay? So he would argue that if you came to him and said, what should I do? I'd like to donate my organs. He would say no. Because there's no mitzvah for you to do that. Once you're dead, and have a good day. Upon death, one should return the whole body to the earth from which it came, as deemed proper by God. For the deep-rooted recognition of the believing Jew is that just as after death, the spirit is returned to God who gave it. Likewise, it is a divine decree that the body in its full form shall return to the earth as it was. One should not be overly clever and return parts of it to life, regardless of the result. Okay, so the Tzitz Eliezer goes on the other end of the equation. This is the command of the Torah, and the dead shall be buried. Thus it is not proper to annul this mitzvah, even in order to save lives. Others as well, besides for the deceased, are commanded regarding this, for the mitzvah for burial was said to the living. So you cannot say to yourself, you know what, even though the body, my parents are dead and maybe they didn't want, but I want to give away my mother's kidney. He says no. So we have now two arguing poskim here, two arguing codifiers. Rabbi Auerbach that said what? It is, I'll give you a second moment. It is obligated to donate. It's obligated to donate. Rip out his kidney if you could save a life with his kidney. Right? Because why? Live! Judaism is all about life. Right? And we talked about that's not a desecration of the right, like Unterman said. This school of thought would say, no, to give an organ is the highest mitzvah. You let someone else live. The Tzitz Eliezer says, no. You know what? Once the guy is dead, too bad. That's the way it is. So I guess under the Tzitz Eliezer, you would never be able to have organ transplantation unless a kidney. You could give a kidney away, right? Because a living person can't give his heart away, right? And you can't give your liver away, although a lobe of the liver we'll discuss in a moment. But really, according to the Tzitz Eliezer, what would be the only time that you can actually have organ transplantation? Would be when you're alive and you give a kidney and that's it. But as far as a corpse is concerned, even though we can take the things, it's for him it's a no-no.
Well, how would he look at if somebody has a leg amputated?
Well, leg amputated to save your life, why not? See, as long as you have to do whatever you can to save yourself. You have absolutely everything to do that you have to save yourself. It means if you have to eat chazer, you'll eat chazer, desecrate Shabbos. I don't think he would argue with the basic concept of v'chai b'hem. He's just saying now the corpse is not obligated anymore. It's gone. Once you died and the neshama is gone, therefore you can't touch it. Doesn't belong to you anymore. I'm sorry, even to save a life, it doesn't work. Okay? So you have your two extremes really. Really have your two extreme position. I happen to like Rabbi Auerbach's position, but that's a personal feeling. I think that Tzitz Eliezer is a little bit too harsh on the organ donation of a corpse. But there is also a third way, right, between obligation and prohibition, and that is permission. Exactly. Okay? Exactly. So even though, as Rabbi Moshe Feinstein would write, that even though there is no obligation for the family members to donate organs of the deceased, because this is stress associated with losing part of the corpse. That means the family is not obligated. Remember, what did Rabbi Auerbach write? Obligated. Rabbi Moshe says, it is certainly a mitzvah, he writes. For even though it is natural to be pained by the loss of the corpse more than the loss of one's fortune, there is no obligation to feel this way. Therefore, there is a mitzvah not to be pained to this extent and to allow a life to be saved with the organ of the deceased. So if your family gets together and they say the father didn't leave any instructions, but we're okay with it, what does Rabbi Moshe write? It is permissible. Okay? This is about a corpse. Again.
Now, the only time you get cornea transplants, though, is when you're dead.
Correct.
So then you never donate cornea?
This is according to the Tzitz Eliezer. This is according to Rabbi the Tzitz Eliezer. That would say prohibited. Okay. Yes. No, but according to Rabbi Moshe Feinstein, which is the most, He said that's no, but a saving eyesight may save a life. There are those that argue that saving eyesight is saving a life because it says in the Talmud that a blind person is like a dead person. So therefore, giving eyesight to somebody is the same as giving him one of those organs that saves our life. Okay, all right. So okay, now, okay. That's in the case we were talking about of a non-heart beating person. Okay, now we're going to start dealing with here is a question that I'm certainly not qualified to answer this, and I'm not sure if even the great rabbis of today's day have come to some kind of a conclusion. When a heart is still beating, they put in they give you a ventilator and the heart is beating, you are brain dead. Now again, I'm not a doctor, so if you want to know exactly what that means in terms of the physicality of what happens to you, that the brain stem is gone. What? But it's working. So what? Everything above it is gone. You're not coming back from this, right? You're not coming back from this. Okay? Has been an issue that has been debated for a long time. When exactly is the moment of death? When is a person dead? Why is this important? Because there's a great prohibition about murder. You may have heard that. It's in the 10 Commandments. Murder could happen a number of different ways. I mean, you could shoot somebody, you can do that. Also, if someone is not dead and you hasten his death,
Like they did with that.
what?
Like they did with that lady.
Which lady?
The one that
Terry Shivo?
No.
I know that was a few.
Florida.
The one for Terry Shivo. I think it was when they pulled the plug on her and she okay. Again, there was a case. I don't remember all the details of the cases, but again, to hasten one's death, to hasten anybody else's death, is a prohibition. You can't do that. So it becomes very, very important when we know exactly the moment of when death occurs. So just because someone is brain dead, if as long as the heart is beating, they may be beating. So now he's hooked up into a wall, and this is unfortunately a very tough situation, like with that lady Terry Shivo. She was for years laying in a comatose state, no chance, no bands. Every doctor said, there's no way she's getting out of this. No way. And her husband wanted it. It was a burden. There's no quality of life and nothing going on like that. What? They starved her to death. They didn't stop feeding her, and that's usually, you do that. So, again, this is going to be a tough issue over here because there's going to be differences of opinion even among the rabbis of when exactly we consider someone dead. Because if they're still alive, even though you may need the kidney right now, we need the kidney, but the heart is still beating. What do you do? Right, Andre?
Didn't God give man breath and the spirit in breath? And so if they're breathing, wouldn't that mean...
Yeah, but they're breathing artificially.
But isn't that still breathing?
Well, he's still breathing, yes, but but you could keep this guy breathing forever and ever and ever and ever, right? So here again is the moment of now. Once we have established that cadaveric organ donation may be permissible, we must address the technical question of how to define death. The definition of death is an extremely emotional charged topic. Even amongst Orthodox rabbis, this issue is debated and contested. We need to find a way how to get around, deal with this. How do we know? I mean, again, if I remember several years ago, there were the great rabbis in New York that were debating exactly when death occurs. Whether this is death, that's death, etc., etc., etc. Whatever it is, we need to know that we cannot touch the body until death occurs. Until the moment that we are certain that the person is, quote unquote, what? Dead, thank you. That the person is dead, nothing can, even if we say, he's brain dead and nothing's going to happen and there's no chance of him coming back and it's over and it's all of that stuff, it doesn't matter.
Shuffled off this moral coil.
That's what it is. Even then, as long as he is not pronounced dead, you can't touch him. Now that could be frustrating, right? Because this person, is probably, if he was awake, would say, get me out of this situation. Please, please. And that's why it's very important. I mean, this is just a sidebar, that you have to take care of your own business. That means you got to know God willing, you should live till 175 years, right? Healthy and in good shape. But down the line, if you ever get into a hospital situation and you get into a medical situation, you need to make sure that your papers are all in order. All in order of because they're going to follow your instructions. And if you want to be hooked up and plugged in and probed and tested and all of that stuff, then God bless you. But if you don't want to, you got to let them know that. All right? So don't take anything for granted, because once you're hooked up to the machine, halachically it's going to be very hard to kick that plug out. I mean, you may get someone to wrap it around his foot and accidentally walk out of the room. I'm joking. I'm joking. You can't do that. Accidentally. So you got to just be certain of where you want to go. Okay. Every medical advance brings associated problems in its wake, and organ transplant is no exception. Death was classically described as a cessation of cardiac and respiratory activity. The heart stopped, not breathing, he's dead. However, for various reasons, scientists and ethicists have attempted to identify other criteria of death. One of those reasons is to make transplantation feasible. Because organs deteriorate rapidly once the heart stops beating and breathing has stopped, it is very challenging to use organs from such a cadaver. This was one of the reasons why death, as defined by neurologic criteria, i.e. brain dead, emerged as a necessary measure for determining death. Because the doctors would like to see you die earlier, right? The earlier you die, the better off it is to get your organs. The longer it deteriorates, the organs get useless. Once the heart stops beating, what good is the heart? They want to get your heart while it's still functioning and beating. So for them, in their vested interest, brain death is good. Let him be brain dead as long as his heart is beating. Let's go. He's dead. But traditionally, I don't think that would work. So if we go to text number 50 on page 54, our primary purpose, to an Orthodox rabbi, and weigh each situation individually. There's no such things as copycat cases. Everyone has to be taken individually, and don't forget that this is a gut-wrenching thing, a gut-wrenching decision that you have to make over here. I mean, on some of the issues. So, it's a serious thing. But in this class, for all intents and purposes, we're just talking theoretically. Okay. Our primary purpose is to define irreversible coma as a new criterion for death. There are two reasons why there is a need for a definition. Number one, improvements in resuscitative and supportive measures have led to increased efforts to save those who are desperately injured. Sometimes these efforts have only partial success, so that the result is an individual whose heart continues to beat, but whose brain is irreversibly damaged. The burden is great on patients who suffer permanent loss of intellect, on their families, on the hospitals, and those in need of hospital beds are already occupied by these comatose patients. So we got to know, if the guy's dead, what are we not going to do? Give him a bed, right? We're not going to give him a bed, right? I mean, and we're overburdened. We know that, we're talking healthcare here, right? One of the key issues today, in the election today, we talked about across the country was healthcare, right? Talking all over and over and over again, healthcare. Our system is overburdened. And this has become a bigger problem. Why? Because medical science is not retreating, it's advancing. And we're getting better and better at it. It means we're going to keep people alive more and more and more. And therefore, what's going to happen to our system? Yeah, it's already overburdened. It's overburdened. So therefore, we got to know if a person's dead. How are we going to know if a person's dead? Then he's dead. Okay, that's it. And they don't bring him to the hospital. You put him downstairs, right? And that's the way. That's why we have to be very careful how we define death. Now, this is not said by a rabbi, by the way. What I just quoted now is not a rabbinical opinion. I hope you understand that. This is a definition of irreversible coma report in the ad hoc committee on Harvard Medical School to examine the definition of brain death. Okay, this is from a secular point of view. B, obsolete criteria for the definition of death can lead to controversy in obtaining organs for transplantation. Why? Because if you argue that brain death is death, even though the heart is beating, when can you get the heart? Anytime. This guy's brain dead, But if you go to the Orthodox rabbi, the Orthodox rabbi says, I'm sorry, you can't touch the body because the heart is still beating and the guy is still breathing, then what happens to the organs? They're deteriorating. So therefore it's important from Harvard Medical School to have a good definition of when death occurs.
What's the rabbi going to say about someone who gets a heart transplant? His heart is out. His heart isn't beating anymore.
Right.
He's on a machine, and so he's dead.
And
to their definition.
Yeah. No, but the recipient.
Yeah.
So he's dead. So we're bringing back Tchias HaMesim. So we're bringing him back alive. It's a wonderful thing, right?
What if there's a Cohen?
There's a Cohen, and a Cohen's got a bigger problem than the guy and a Cohen has a problem. All of the whole hospital is full of.
Imagine when somebody is declared brain dead but the heart is still beating. They know for sure there's no pain felt by the person.
That I don't know. That you'd have to ask a neurologist, but you would suspect. But you would suspect if the guy is brain dead that he's not feeling any pain. I mean, so.
Do they operate without anesthesia to get the heart out?
That now you're asking the right guy. You see, when I went to medical school, my mother would be so proud that you asked me this question. She would say, "Look what they're asking my son about anesthesia." Finally, a question not having to do with a chicken have a nail in its stomach. Finally, a question about not salting a chicken, right? Oh, anesthesia. He's talking anesthesia. I don't know. You'd have to ask a surgeon. And we have a surgeon here. We have a doctor that deals with end-of-life cases. Dr. Fried is in the back over there. And we have other doctors here in the room. I'm certainly not qualified to answer the medical questions about this. This is the only thing about this class is to know when to ask a question. You see, because sometimes it's too late. You come into the hospital, I get questions. The family calls me up, they hook the guy up to the machines, they now got him going, and now they call up and they say, oh, you know what could we do? Well, why didn't you ask me on the way from the hospital? I would have told you. Stop the ambulance, get yourself a drink or something, and no. But now sometimes it's too late, because now the guy is breathing. You can't pull the plug on the guy, the poor guy, so you have to know that part of this class is to educate ourselves to know when to ask a question. Sometimes it's too late and then it's over.
You brought up the subject about the system being overburdened. Does Judaism speak to that issue about when is it good for society as opposed to if it's good for the individual?
Of course, absolutely. Absolutely so. Every Judaism as a whole has a definitive opinion about everything. So it may not have any impact here in America, but you talk about in Israel, another question, who comes first, what comes first, you have triage. You got triage. God forbid, Israel fights a war. Soldiers are injured. Who do you go first? What do you go first? Who are you going to give medical care first? You got a soldier. All these issues are debated and discussed and talked about. And believe me, no rabbi who gets into this field does this without understanding that his opinion is going to be carrying weight and life and death issues. This is not like most rabbis get a question. Okay, Rabbi, can we daven at 6:27 or 6:29? Okay, it's not exactly a life and death issue here. I mean, it's important. I'm not saying it's not important in a minute or two. It's important, especially if you come to the shul in the morning, at 6:28 and everybody's rushing to get out. They got to know that and look at the clock like this. The minute they want to blow out of there, it's important, but it's not a life and death issue. These people who are dealing in these medical issues take it very, very, very seriously. They don't do anything by just off the flippantly. I mean, the next text 55 is a text you could read on your own. I mean, this deals with, we contend that the proposition that brain death constitutes death of the human being is incoherent and therefore not credible. I mean, this is Franklin G. Miller and Robert Trung rethinking the ethics of vital organ donation. So again, this goes back and forth again at the whole discussion of when death occurs. In halachic discourse as well, the issue of brain death criterion is controversial. While there is a minority opinion that accepts brain death, most notably the chief rabbinate of Israel. The chief rabbinate of Israel is going to tell you that if you're brain dead, you're dead. That's their official position. Okay? Others argue that brain dead patient is still alive, or at the very least, questionable if he's alive. Not that he's fully alive, but he's questionable. A case in which there is doubt as whether the person has already died or is still alive but on the verge of death. From the Jewish perspective, the last moments of life are as precious as any other. And we may do nothing to shorten life even for a moment. And I could tell you this is a personal, because I happened to be there when my mother-in-law passed away. They would not let you hold the arm of a geisa, someone that's already about to pass away in the throes of death. They won't let you touch them, hold a hand, embrace them, hug them, kiss them. No touching, because every touch could lead to one less breath. They get excited or whatever it is. So it was very difficult. You have the family standing around the bed. Your natural impulse is to do what? Go hold their hand, do something. You can't. All right, because the last few moments are important. If we accept the fact that brain dead patients are possibly still considered to be the twilight of life, then the harvesting of organs from these patients would be forbidden. Just as it is forbidden to kill a healthy person in order to save another. You can't do that, right? You can't. I need a kidney. I'm going to shoot everybody here and see whose kidney matches up. You just can't do that, right? So therefore, according to major halachic opinions, a brain-dead patient must be treated as if he's alive. Harvesting organs from a brain-dead patient is problematic to this view. This has serious ramifications for hearts which can only be harvested and transplanted from brain-dead patients because they need circulation of blood and oxygen to remain viable. However, in the case of a kidney, it's completely different. Okay? So now we have this. So now we know that from the halachic point of view, when can you harvest an organ from a dead body? Only after it is declared dead, non-breathing. Brain-dead patients, according to halacha, are still alive if the heart is pumping and they're breathing. Once it's over, you could get it. You can't get the heart, that's too bad. And that's just the way it is. So therefore, most opinions would go according to that when is death occur in Judaism? When the heart stops and the breathing is stopped. And I think that, Dr. Fried, if you don't mind, I think that Reb Zalman Shimon, the Chabad Rabbi in 770, who passed away about 20 years ago, I think that you had asked him once, or we had asked, Dr. Sorelnik, a neurologist in our shul, had asked him, and his criteria was temperature.
The body's still warm, the patient's alive.
If the body is still warm, the patient's alive. So would this be further, more of a chumrah than just cessation of breath? So even though the person has stopped breathing, the heart has stopped functioning, as long as the body is still warm, you can't touch it. It would happen. So coldness would happen immediately, minutes after, you would say? Minutes.
Not necessarily.
No? That the body could...
Supposing somebody had a bad infection and running a high fever, it'd take a long time for that body
to cool down. But would that come into play if they had an infection? Or
He was only saying it with respect to brain death.
Oh, okay, so the person was, overall, he was dead. There was no mitigating factors here. He wasn't running a high temperature or anything. It was just, so the body, and given everything else, because I don't want to leave the class thinking that, Judaism is like just freaked out. The guy's still alive 2 days after he's declared dead. I don't want anyone to think that way, but it is a take. And I just brought this up because it's a very serious thing. We see here, touching the person even for a minute, even before, is halachically not permissible.
He wasn't saying it was with respect to heart and lung. Heart and lung function to stop.
That's over.
That's a halachic criteria.
Oh, that's a halachic criteria.
You're saying with respect to whether brain death could also be considered.
Also because he's okay.
A whole bunch of criteria.
He added the one with the warmth and all. Okay, all right. Again, I just want to make sure. Listen, I don't want anyone leaving this class thinking that they know anything about brain death. All right, here. We're still confused about brain death. You got to ask either a competent rabbi, a competent doctor. When all of these issues, and again, there was we go back to the argument among poskim, among codifiers, even within Judaism, back and forth. So it's an issue that's still debated even today.
Well, when my grandmother was dying, I slept by her and held her hand all night. And after I let go of her hand is when she died. So I think maybe sometimes touching them makes them live longer.
I wish I would agree with you, but halacha says no. Halacha says once a person has gone into the state of agoisis, that means a case in which there is doubt whether the person has already died, that means they're at the throes of death, you cannot touch them. That's indisputable. I don't think that's any of the poskim, any of the, that we called rabbis, and Rabbi Schusterman here in LA and others, they said do not touch the person. So now we have one criteria left. The case of the living organ donor. Okay? Because we talked about someone's dead, it's good. Someone that's brain dead so far, no good until they're dead. The case of the living organ donor. Okay? Most organ transplantations come from cadavers. But as these have failed to meet the growing need for organs, attention has turned to organs from living donors. Organ donation by living donors presents a unique ethical dilemma, in that physicians must risk the life of a healthy person to save or improve the life of a patient. Transplantation surgeons have therefore been cautious in tapping this source. As surgical techniques and outcomes have improved, however, the practice has slowly expanded. Okay, so now we're talking about a living donor can give what? One or two things. Either he can give his kidney or he can give a lobe of his liver. Because of the liver, and again, I'm not a medical doctor, but when it's, you transplant it into the person, you yourself can live with the piece missing, and I guess the body of the recipient harvests it over and over again until it's expanded so they can live again. They can do a liver transplant. Okay? Now, is there risk for the donor? Yes. Of course, there's always risk for the donor, right? Anytime you go under, God forbid, has the risk diminished over time? Have we come, sure it has. Sure, the risk has diminished over time because surgeons and transplantation, specialists have, they're perfecting it all the time to minimize, God forbid, in the days, infection could set in, and a million things could happen to you while you're there. So therefore, there's a number of different procedures that we want to talk about, and when it is. So let's look at a piece of the Talmud, which is very interesting. Page, if you're following along, it's on page 57. Okay? How do we know that if someone sees his friend drowning in the river or being dragged by a wild animal or attacked by robbers, that he's obligated to save him? How do we know that? Why don't we just say, hey, you know what? You're out of luck. This is it, statistics, right? What would we say? Statistics. There's statistics that there's going to be a certain amount of people that are going to be eaten by bears this year in the world. Too bad. I'm sorry. You know what? You shouldn't have gone near the bear. You shouldn't have antagonized him. You're out of luck. So how do we know that we have to save him? Because it says, you shall not stand by the shedding of your fellow's blood. Leisamid al dam reyecha. You can't stand by while your friend is dying. Okay? It's a prohibition for you to do that. But what do we learn from this verse? Don't we learn this from another place in the Torah, as we have learned? How do you know that one is obligated to restore another one's life? Because it says, you shall return his lost property to him. The Talmud explains from this verse, you shall return it to him alone. One who would have concluded that one must save another person's life with one's own bodily effort, but there's no requirement to spend money or hire others to save another's life. Just as one is not required to spend money to save someone else's property. So we would think that, you have to give of your body, but you don't have to spend money. Like, the ambulance is going to charge me for being called. I'm not going to do that, cheap guy. That is why we need the verse, you shall not stand by the shedding of your fellow's blood, to teach that one is required to spend one's own financial resources to save a life. That means if you got to rent a boat to get the guy out of the water, what are you going to do? You got to rent a boat. You have a shig in there, you're standing over there, an idiot. Right? Chosid shoite, is a dummy. So here from the Talmud we learn two things. One, our body we have to use to save another person's life, and we have to use our resources, right, to save another person's life. Okay. Now, what does this tell you? Now I want you to think about this. What does it tell you about an instance where the rescue involves risk to life? Is one obligated to risk one's life to save someone else's? The Torah does here. the cases here we talk about drowning or wild animal or robbers. We want to save the guy. It doesn't say how you're going to save the guy. It doesn't say that you have to put yourself in the place of the robbers. It doesn't say you have to wrestle the bear, right? It says you should try to save him, right? You should try to save him. Is one obligated to put yourself at risk to save someone else's life? No. Okay. So this is this. So therefore, there. In summary, it remains. It's unclear. We don't know. It says you should save his life. From this passage, whether or not one is obligated to assume risk to save, we can't say definitively. Could anybody say definitively from this verse? No, because it says you should save someone else's life. We don't know. Likewise, there are other Talmudic passages that are similarly ambiguous. Most authorities come to the conclusion that there is not enough evidence to say there's an obligation to assume risk in order to save someone else's life. There's not enough evidence in the Torah or the Talmud to tell us to assume this obligation. Thus, all the codifiers, most notably Maimonides and the Shulchan Aruch, when citing the law that one must make physical effort and spend money to save another, do not mention that one has to take risk. Although there would be no halachic obligation to assume risk, would it be nevertheless be permitted if one wanted to do so? Yes. Here's a different story, right? So even though I have no obligation to do it, Rabbi Feinstein argued that it is permitted. That means if you want to go and you want to put your life in danger to save this guy, yes, you are permitted to do it. So what would Rabbi Feinstein argue in the case of the father and the daughter? What? He could put himself at risk, right? So if this guy came to Rabbi Feinstein and said, look, I want to give my second kidney to my daughter, what did Rabbi Feinstein say? Go, do it. If you want to, I'm not obligating you, but you can go ahead and do it. Even though you're putting your life at risk, you may live 10 years shorter or 20 years shorter, but if you want to do it, it's not obligatory, he writes, for one to take on a possible risk in order to save another person from certain danger. However, it is reasonable that there should be a difference between the commandment, you shall not stand by the shedding of your fellow's blood, and all other commandments, in that all other commandments it would be forbidden to assume risk in order to keep the commandment. That means, what if I have to blow the shofar on Rosh Hashanah, okay? And the only way that I could get a shofar is I have to put my life at risk. What did Rav Moshe say at that point? Don't do it. Even though we know from the Holocaust people blew the shofar and all of that stuff, it's very nice stories and great people did it. But according to halacha, what would be the law? No, right? No, you wouldn't have to. But in the case of Leisamer Adam Reyecha, do not stand on your fellow's blood. Whereas to save another, it would be allowed to put yourself in danger. Since this is a case, a life will be saved as a result. So blowing the shofar is very nice, shaking a lulav and esrog is nice, eating matzah is very nice, and you'll hear many great stories of great tzaddikim that went to great lengths, and they didn't eat and they fasted if they didn't have food on Pesach. All of this is great and wonderful, and tzaddikim do it. But Rabbi Moshe should say, as far as obligation is concerned, what do? You go on, right? The only time that you put your life at risk is to save someone else's life, right? Conversely, it is the opinion of Reb Shneur Zalman of Liadi. Who's that? Anybody know who? The Alter Rebbe. Now we're getting close to home here. So everybody else's opinion is nice, but Reb Shneur Zalman's is gold. Okay? That even for the sake, listen to this, for the sake of saving one life, one may not voluntarily assume life risk, threatening risk. The Alter Rebbe would prohibit you putting yourself in danger to save someone else's life. Prohibits it. As he writes, if a rescue effort is dangerous, then it is forbidden to risk one's life in order to save a companion, since the rescuer is not in danger. Although this means that one will witness the death of one's companion, and an attempt at rescue is only a possible danger, whereas one's companion is in certain danger, the Torah says, and you should live by them, which implies that one should not risk possible death by fulfilling the mitzvah of, you shall not stand by the shedding of your fellow's blood. So according to the Alter Rebbe, the father comes to the Alter Rebbe and says, Alter Rebbe, I want to give my daughter the second kidney. What did the Alter Rebbe say? No. Sorry. So here we have a machlokes, here we have a different disagreement between Reb Moshe Feinstein and the Alter Rebbe, where the Alter Rebbe would say, no, there's no obligation to do that, and to risk, and it is actually forbidden.
What about Abraham going after
What about him? Abraham went with God's power. He had supernatural powers, Abraham. You know how Abraham won the war?
Took a risk going.
There's a lot of people in the Bible. Bible stories are completely different. Bible stories are very different. You can't compare Bible stories. I mean, people getting thrown in the lion's den, and the guy, getting thrown into a furnace, and Moses coming before Pharaoh. Pharaoh could have killed him. Anyway, to save a nation is very different. You ask a very good question. You ask actually a good question that he brings down over here. Because there's a difference between saving one person and saving a town. I mean, if you're going to save a town, then you put your life at risk. To save a whole town, to save a people, obviously. So to save one, maybe not, but even the Alter Rebbe would admit, to save a multiple of people, you do everything you can to do that. The what? Who? No, he went to war, he says, to save Lot. He went after the 4 kings. He fought a war against the 4 kings. Yeah, but you know what the Talmud says? You know how he won the war? He picked up sand and he threw it. It turned into Scud missiles. I mean, when you have that kind of power, I don't think that's called danger. And especially since Abraham went through, Nimrod threw him into the furnace, and he walked out unburned. So Abraham was a different story altogether. Okay, so here now, what must we be willing to do in order to save a person who is in danger? 2 things: bodily effort and financial expenditure. Right? 2 things we need to do. What must we be willing to do in order to save a person who is in danger? Bodily effort. That means, God forbid, there's a snake. You need to go over and hit the snake with a stick to save him, right? And you have to spend money. According to Rabbi Moshe Feinstein, may you risk your life to save someone who's in danger? Yes. Thank you very much. According to the Alter Rebbe, no. Must you risk a limb to save someone who's in danger?
No.
1 second. Must you risk a limb in order to save someone who's in danger? No. Permitted, but not obligatory, right? It's permitted. You want to give, or you want to give? You want to give a kidney, right? Can you give a kidney? Yes. But is it obligated to give a kidney? No. If you were obligated, what would happen? We'd all be standing in the hospital now, right? If the government told a Jew, allow one of your limbs to be amputated of one which will not endanger life, or we will kill your friend, what should he do? What should a guy do? The government says, I want you to give me your arm in order I'm going to kill him. What should a guy do? So he states, her ways are the ways of pleasantness, and it is necessary that the laws of our Torah will accord with reason and rational thought. How could it occur that a person should allow his eyes to be blinded or his hands or feet to be cut off so that his friend should not be killed? Therefore, I find no basis for such a ruling that obligates one to suffer the loss of a limb other than an act of outstanding piety. I mean, the guy wants to, but no obligation. Blessed is the portion of the one who can withstand this. But the Rabbi says clearly, what do you say? No. I say, I'm sorry, but kill the guy. I'm not giving up anything, right? I'm not giving up anything. Okay, so that's according to the Rabbas. So he goes even further, right? He says that even if there's no loss of limb and you could save someone else's life, I mean there is a loss of limb, but it's not life threatening. Like they want a finger, or maybe a toe, an earlobe, something, a tooth, but eyes, forget about it. Okay, so now. Here comes the critical thing, because here's the bottom line. I'm gonna mention 5 types of procedures, okay? And you're gonna tell me one of the 3 things: required, permitted, or forbidden. Okay? Just Jewish law. We'll see. We'll take it step by step. We'll go Reb Moshe, Radbaz, the Alter Rebbe. Reb Moshe, Radbaz, the Alter Rebbe. Okay. Remember, the criteria is, risking a life. Okay? So, number 1, blood donations. Permitted? Required. Required, permitted, or forbidden. Blood donations. Blood. Giving blood. Required. Right? No risk at all. Small. The risk is minimal. I mean, I guess there could be maybe a risk of infection, of something happening, but definitely required. Okay, so that would put himself at risk. Then it's a separate issue whatsoever. He's going to ask his doctor, and his doctor says no. Then of course, then it's not. But a regular person, healthy person, type O positive, we need blood in the community. What do? You go. It's not permitted. It's not forbidden. It is required. Bone marrow donation. Required, permitted, forbidden. Who says required? Who says permitted? Who says forbidden? Okay, the answer is required. Again, what is it? There is a small chance, yes, small chances. There's whatchamacallit, there's pain, a little bit of, we're not talking about the swab. I mean, I'm not talking about, to you register to the bone marrow registry. That's, you have to be a Rosh Marusha not to do that. You got to be somebody who's evil, not to do that. We're talking about actually, you are a match, and someone else is a match. It's required. Why? Because even though I'll give you one chance to talk. Even though there is pain, but the risk is minimal, and it grows back right away. The body recreates bone marrow, so it's no risk to you. You feel a little bit in your hip, but you know what? We'll live with that for you to save someone else's life. Now you agree with me or no? So we agree that this is required. Arnold, go ahead, please.
Yeah, I was saying California, unfortunately, to be a bone marrow donor, they have to put you under general anesthesia to take the bone marrow. So I disagree.
You disagree that it's required? Okay. So go ahead.
Now, most bone marrow is not bone marrow. They get a shot, it stimulates them, and then they go on this machine and kind of spins out the primitive cells, the stem cells, and so they're just sitting on a machine.
So it's like a dialysis.
So it's just like getting, it's just like giving
blood,
giving platelets or anything like that. So that's about, but the 80-90% of transplants are done like that. They don't actually go after the bone marrow, and like all the transplants in Israel are done that way.
So that would even push it further in the required.
Children, they prefer the bone marrow.
So we're going to talk in the 80 to 90% where you're just sitting there and they're doing what Brian is explaining. Then it's obligated. It's no loss to you, and you save a life. First kidney donation. Your first kidney, required? No. Permitted. Okay, permitted. Lobe of liver donation. Okay, here's lobe of liver. Now again, I don't know again, and I have to do a little bit of research, but this, I guess the procedure is more dangerous to the giver than a kidney would be. Because now you're cutting the guy's liver. Here, you're not taking out the whole kidney, you're cutting the guy's liver. So liver donation is more dangerous procedure. See the doctors if you agree with this. Live liver donation is more dangerous procedure than a kidney transplant. Although the lobe of the liver donated does somewhat regenerate, there is still a more substantial risk of complications as a result of the procedure. At best, this surgery would be permitted by Rabbi Moshe Feinstein, but according to the Alter Rebbe, who prohibits taking risks to save a life, it is likely, not always, that the risk would be assessed as too high and thus would be forbidden, according to the Alter Rebbe. So when we come to live liver donations, permitted with a question mark. That's what I would put. Permitted, but with a question mark. Again, when, how, and where. So it could be either, it depends upon who you ask. Rabbi Moshe Feinstein, Alter Rebbe, so on. Second kidney donation. Required? No. Permitted? No. Forbidden. For Rabbi Feinstein said yes. So Rabbi Feinstein would be the one. Most poskim would say no, but Rabbi Feinstein says you permit it. He would permit it to do it, but most poskim would forbid it to give that. He have to do a surgery himself. Right. Yeah, exactly. However, the truth is that we have been informed by expert and God-fearing physicians that the level of risk to a kidney donor is extremely low, and that 99% of the donors return to normal health, I guess. Thus it appears that the standard rule that is permitted and also a mitzvah to donate one of the kidneys to save the life of an endangered fellow who suffers from renal failure. And this mitzvah is worthy of protecting the donor like 1,000 shields. Rabbi Vadia Yosef, one of the leading scholars in today's thing. Okay. So, what have we learned so far today? Number one, the body is holy according to Judaism. You could not normally touch the body. What overrides that rule? V'chai behem, pekuach nefesh. The idea of life, that Judaism is obsessed with living. So since we're obsessed with living, we talk about taking from a cadaver. Any problem with taking an organ from a cadaver giving an organ? L'chura not, right? Seemingly no problem. If someone wants to donate, so you could look it up. Now I suggest you go home, look up HODS, Halachic Organ Donation Society. These are rabbis that encourage you to, say, give a life, save a life. What do you care if you go with your 2 kidneys? I mean, once you're there already laying in the pine box without 2 kidneys, they're still going to bury you, right? And you never know. These 2 kidneys may save someone else's life, your heart, whatever it is. So these are rabbis that encourage you to go ahead. And I suggest you take a look at the website that they have. It's done completely halachically. It was right, Arnold. It was recognized by great rabbis. They've gone through it. They've studied this more than the hour and a half that we're spending on this. They've gone through it. HODS. Halachic Organ Donation Society. Halachic Organ Donation Society. Okay? So that would mean that after you're dead, there's no problem. They can take your organs, whatever organs needs. One person could, you got 2 kidneys, and you got a liver, and you got a heart, and you got 2 corneas. It's already 5 people are there. And then what else, whatever else they can use off you. There was a study over here done. I missed it over here. I think I passed it by. But it was a case of where 6 people we talk about risking lives. We talk about Esther. Look, Esther risked her life. She went in Achashverosh's court when she wasn't allowed to go, right? She told Mordechai, he's going to kill me. But there was a case over here, it was an interesting case, that they had 6 people donate 6 kidneys. And the reason for that, here it is. People are often only willing to donate to family or friends. But, which is, makes sense, right? You know somebody, you want to give them. But at the same time, they may not be a match with this person to whom they wish to donate. So what do you do? So I'd like to be a donor. I want to give someone I know or someone I love my kidney, but they're no match. The following article speaks about an ingenious solution to this problem. 6 recipients received organs from 6 donors in operation at the Johns Hopkins Hospital in Maryland. The procedure was made possible after an altruistic donor, neither a friend nor a relative of any of the patients, was found to match one of them. Okay, so you match, but I don't know the guy. 5 patients and a willing donor whose kidney was incompatible with theirs, but did match others in the group. This meant that suddenly there were 6 people who could receive an organ. The operations were carried out simultaneously to make sure no one backed out. Because once my loved one got his kidney, you see now, no. So everybody, 6 people found matches to 6 anonymous people. They didn't know of them. Right? So the 6 operations were done. The operations were carried simultaneously to make sure no one backed out after their loved ones received a kidney. If all goes to plan, each patient can expect a new kidney to last for as long as 20 years. Recipient Jean Hines, whose husband donated to another patient, said more people should know about this system. So here in Johns Hopkins, they had a system. You want to donate, we're going to call you together. When we have a group together, bingo. So that's one way of dealing with the shortage of things. Number 2, we talked about the state of brain death. So according to most halachic people, except for the chief rabbin in Israel, brain dead is not enough of a criteria to start harvesting your organs. You have to be dead. Not just brain dead, but actually dead. When that occurs, you could find out from your a local Orthodox competent rabbi. All right? Number 3 is about live organ donations. So we talked about the various things. They talked about the three opinions, the Radbaz, the Alter Rebbe, and Reb Moshe Feinstein. One said yes, one said maybe, one said no. All of these things in all of the cases. So, so give blood, yes. Bone marrow, yes. Kidney, if you want to. Liver, questionable who you ask. Second kidney, very questionable. You have to find Reb Moshe. Unfortunately, Reb Moshe passed away a few years ago. Just to tell you who Reb Moshe was, because he was a person I've met, and I saw him, and knew him, shook his hand. Just a phenomenal rabbi in the sense that, not because he knew more than everybody, I don't know if he knew more Talmud or knew more about the law, but he had broad shoulders. That means he was willing to extend himself where other rabbis didn't want to extend themselves. I mean, this that he said, that you could go ahead and donate your second kidney, don't think that he said this lightly. I mean, he didn't say that, but he said, even in the case where you want to put your life at risk, you are permitted to do so. Don't think he didn't weigh this in his mind for a long time and go through the Alter Rebbe and go through all of this and go through this and go through that. He was a very serious man about this tall. I remember when I was about 10 years old or 8 years old, he came to lecture in Montreal, and that day they said, Reb Moshe is coming, everybody get together, put white shirts on. We all met him and greeted him, and we're all standing in the base medrash, and we're waiting for this guy. I thought he was going to be a tall guy. This little short guy comes in with a big yarmulke over his head. I didn't understand one word that he talked about, because he lectured about something, and it's a great Talmud lecture, but I did over the years have times when I got to ask him questions. You couldn't ask him directly, went to his grandson. Maybe some of you have heard of Reb Moshe Tendler. Reb Moshe Tendler is one of the great codifiers today. It's his son-in-law, his grandchildren, Reb Reuven Feinstein, other people. But he was just a very unique character in that he was willing to take the risk of extending himself if he felt that this is right in opinion. He wasn't calcified. Most rabbis become calcified. They're afraid to make a decision. Rabbi, what do you? I don't know. Better not. Better not is not an opinion.
As you know, the bone marrow issue is close to my heart and my marrow. A couple
Yes.
things that are on that. First is one of the great tragedies is that people will sign up for the registry, but when they get called because they have a match and someone's life is depending on it, they'll say, "No, I signed up for my cousin." Can they back out? Which, of course, because
Yeah, sure.
that's one of the great tragedies.
Right.
It goes against halakhic
Right.
situation.
What would talk exactly to what we talked about the case in John Hopkins.
The person the drive that found my marrow was put together by a rabbi in England, an Orthodox rabbi, who helped raise the money that found my donor. And as you know, my donor is a Orthodox yeshiva
Student.
So it's like his obligation. Of course, and the other piece of this is once he's given me his marrow, he's responsible for me for the rest of his life.
There you go.
He saved my life. So he's,
No, it's unbelievable. And it's unbelievable. I can't think of a greater mitzvah than to save someone else's life. I mean, and especially with no risk to him. I mean, it's one thing, I'm going to give you my arm, but then I'm not going to be called up by the Texas Rangers anymore. But to do this is incredible.
Do all these donor situations require them to be immediate recipients?
I think, except for yes, absolutely. There has to be, certainly in the case of risk, where a kidney or a liver or a heart, certainly there has to be, because it's lefanenu. That was the key word, that there has to be a clear and present danger. Except for a bone marrow, which, of course, is not really taken beforehand. I mean, that's a whole different story, but...
Yeah, it is taken, it's taken, because it deteriorates quickly even if it's frozen. But what they'll do is sometimes they'll take some extra, and if you're like losing the graft, they'll do something called the donor leukocyte infusion.
Right.
They'll do things down the line so that they might need this much, but they take that much because they got the guy there.
Oh, of course.
And they put that in the freezer. And they
yeah, but I don't think that would fall into the same category, because bone marrow is like blood. It regenerates. I mean, and you're back. I mean, you produce more of it. What Dr. Fried is talking about is you're talking about an organ that you have to go through a serious operation. There has to be the clear and present danger there.
You can't bank.
No, you can't bank.
So cornea
No.
is not applied. Cornea
No.
is good to bank.
Right, exactly. Exactly.
So with an umbilical cord transplant, for people who can't find a match, they use umbilical cord blood because it can be less of a match. That would be in the blood category. Because that just gets thrown out anyway.
I would submit.
So it would be an issue.
I don't think. I don't think it would be. But again, we were talking theory here. I don't want anybody to go home and write Chabad.org that at this class the stem cell issue came up and we said we're all for it, and then next thing I know I'm stripped, branded, and my sword is busted and they throw me out. So you got to be careful what you say over here. And again, I mean, when you ask questions, please understand either I'm not a doctor, but we have doctors here, so you may want to ask them if it's a medical question, but if it's a halachic question, try to answer it.
If a person, and this happens, I know in Israel and other places, that sometimes a soldier will throw himself on a grenade.
Okay, so that's Mesiras Nefesh. That's you're talking about there. He doesn't ask a question. This is called Kanayim Paigim Boy. This is something Mesiras Nefesh, to save a life or two lives. You want to go and do it. You want to be Meiser Nefesh. That's up to you. You cannot ask a question, because if you ask a question, they'll say no. It's too late. But again, we didn't talk about, but to save a town, absolutely. If you're going to just save a town, but absolutely. The question would be here. Okay, so if we're talking about taking a risk, I don't know how this applies, but the Secret Service that protect the president, the old word is, what are they willing to do? Take a bullet for him, right? They're willing to take a bullet. That means if someone's going to shoot the president, the Secret Service guy is obligated to get to take the bullet. How would that fit in here? Should he take the bullet?
Yes.
Depending upon whom the president is, or what you say? No. Not what? He's not obligated. Right? He's not obligated to take. So what would the halachic say? That forget it. Rabbi Moshe maybe would say they are maybe. If you want to put yourself at risk to save the president. No, not even. Never. No.
Forbidden.
Even Rabbi Moshe. I mean, the Radbaz and the Alter Rebbe nothing to talk about. But even Rabbi Moshe here would say, forget about it. Let him get shot.
Well, he's getting paid on the presumption
That he's going to do that. Yes.
That's his job.
This is his job. Yeah.
We're talking halach, we're not talking.
Right.
If he takes the bullet and he saves the president, isn't that in a way saving a nation?
Yeah, it's important. Yeah. Well, it depends who it is. That's what we say. We can't say anything on tape right now. After the tape closes, we'll say. But it depends. It depends who it is. Anyways, just to sum up it in the last text is about, and unfortunately, the little girl Renata Daniel Peterson, whose father wanted to do this. It says he received a kidney from an uncle, but the organ failed within a few years. And Daniel, because of his daughter, could not physically handle the rigorous aneurysm and steroids necessary. The same problem that contributed to the failure of the kidney donated by her father.
So the risk was the same to him, but even higher for her because it.
Well, her was certain. Her was death. I mean, her getting it was either a matter of living or going on dialysis, and she.
If she couldn't handle the rejection, the anti-rejection medication.
Right, which she didn't.
The chances were not very good to begin with.
Right. No, it was a great risk. No question. So, just the key points. Judaism teaches we have to respect a dead body. We know that the importance of life in Jewish law is reflected in the fact that all mitzvahs are suspended when life is in danger. So that's the overriding criteria. Pushes away aside, even as we remember what Rabbi Unterman wrote so beautifully, that it's not desecrating the dead body. It's honoring the dead. It's honoring the corpse. There are grounds today that it's permissible and even obligated to donate an organ after death has been conferred according to Jewish law because it can save a life, as Rabbi Unterman wrote. It is forbidden to harvest organs from a person who has not been certified dead according to Jewish law. So you can't run in there and say he's brain dead and grab his heart. Sorry. If one is obligated to save someone else is in danger, yes, you are obligated to save someone. This obligation includes making a physical and financial effort, but not the assumption of risk. One is never obligated to lose a limb to save another. Right? That's the Rabbah's rights. It's nice that you want to save the other guy, but if the guy's going to chop off your arm, you're not obligated to do that. According to many halachic authorities, the risk of live kidney donation is now so low for us to permit and encourage donation. It is important Jewish value to think about the needs and wants of other people. So here is something that is just it's an incredible thing, because if you think about this, at the time, we talk about in ancient times, this is not a problem. going back to 100 years, 200 years, not a problem. But today, with the development, God has given us an opportunity to literally share life with someone else. That you walk around. Several years ago, my dear friend Arnold and myself had an opportunity to talk about organ donations to encourage it. We gave a little class up was it at the I think it was at the JCC. Yeah, at the JCC, people came there, and the recipients, nothing to talk about. But even the donors, the parents of the children. And there were some heart-wrenching cases there. 19-year-old dies in a car accident. The parents give away his organs. The way the parents talked about it, about the honor of being able to do this and seeing someone else walking in the street, walking around. I don't think that there's a greater mitzvah than saving someone else's life and knowing that down the line, the greatest tragedy, to turn a great tragedy into something positive. So I'm not here to encourage you to check off, the organ donation, but think about it. This is something that God has given to us now as a tool. Again, 100 years ago, we wouldn't have to worry about this. No doubts about that. But today, because of the possibility, it's something that we should think about and discuss. Thank you very much.